Welcome back to my tutorials on runpython.org and Python 3. Today's tutorial is specifically aimed at runpython.org and not so much Python. I want to talk about the features that are built into runpython.org for saving your code. As we said in the last tutorials about writing your first short programs, you could create a series of statements in Python in the editor on the left and then execute them all at once. Problem is, if you reload this tab or close your browser, come back later on, you're probably not going to have that code anymore. So you could copy and paste it into something else and then copy and paste it back into runpython.org. That would be kind of awful. So to deal with that, runpython works with a website called github.com, which is a place where programmers often create free accounts and store their code. So it seems like a natural fit for runpython.org. So we're going to be using a couple of things that are here at the top of the page that we haven't dealt with before. Before we can do this though, you're going to need to have an account on github.com. Now, if you don't already have a GitHub account, you should pause this video now and go to github.com and create your free account. I'll wait for you. No, I won't. Pause the video and go do it and then come back. Anyway, so I assume that now you have your GitHub account. You're going to want to do the following steps. Go log into your GitHub account. So I'm going to go switch over to my GitHub account to demonstrate what we're going to do next. And just pretend it's your GitHub account. All right, so here's my GitHub homepage. GitHub has a number of sort of home screens. The thing I want to do is create a new repository. And I can access that in the upper right-hand corner where this plus is. And it generates a pull down and you select new repository. So on this page, you're going to have the name of your account, and then on the right, a repository name, something short, sweet, and meaningful. Test wouldn't be bad. You don't need to put a description in here. I would suggest keeping it public. You can have private ones if you want. I think a free account may have a limited number of private repositories available. Anyway, this is really important, the step down here. It says skip this step if you're importing an existing repository. We're not importing an existing repository. We're going to create a new one to use with runpython.org. So check the box that says initialize this repository with a README. You can ignore the git ignore, and you can ignore add a license or not. And then finally click the green button that says create repository. GitHub cranks for a little while. Okay, now GitHub has created the test repository, and what it is just a place to store files. Because I said to create it with a README, GitHub has created an empty README file, and it's called readme.md. MD stands for Markdown, and it's displaying the contents of that README file here. It really only has the name test because that's the name of the repository. Now, we want to create a new Python source code file. So to do that, we're going to click on the button here that says create new file. Now, up here, we have at the very top, this is your username, this is the name of your repository, and within that repository, we have a place to create the name of the new file. Name your file. You can name it whatever you want. The convention in Python for naming Python files is to keep it all to lowercase. If it's multiple words in the name, ram them all together, all lowercase, and end it with a .py, which stands for Python. So I'm going to keep it really simple and name my file test.py. I can go down and just commit new file. I usually like to actually put a little content in there. So I start a comment. There's a little window here for editing the new file. You don't have to do this. Test program by Mr. Eric. And I'll even write a little Python code. Print hello from GitHub. Now this is GitHub. GitHub can't execute Python. It's displaying Python, but it can't execute it. I'll scroll down to the bottom to commit new file. I can add a little comment here if I want. I don't want. And click the button that says commit new file. And now I go back to the repository view. So again, this is my username on GitHub, the name of the repository. And now, in addition to the readme.md file, there's a new file listed. This is a list of all the files in the repository. The new file is called test.py. If I click on it, it just shows me the content that I added. Pound test program by Mr. Eric, print hello from GitHub. Simple. Now, if I want to bring this file as I've created it into Runpython, what I want to do is copy the URL. So I go up to the URL window, highlight the URL, which you can't see in the screencast, and press Control-C to copy it. And then I'm going to return to Runpython. So in the URL window, I'm going to type runpython.org and come back to Runpython. Now, here's what the magic happens. This little edit window over here that says GitHub or Google Drive URL. I click on that and paste the URL that I just copied from GitHub and press enter. Runpython.org goes over to GitHub and says, hey, let's have it. And it goes and grabs the content of that repository file. So we can run that. Hello from GitHub. Cool. Let's see. I would like to make a change. I'm going to create a new line. It says print. This is a second line in my program. This is really creative. I can run that. Yep, it worked. Okay, stop. Now, I'd like to save that, but I can't. I need to log into GitHub first. So let me do that. The login button here. Log in. Now, if you haven't done this before, GitHub will ask you to authorize runpython.org. I have authorized runpython.org before, so GitHub just says, cool. Whoops, oh, I see. I need to paste in my URL again. Reload. I have my line. Print. This is my second print in the program. Now, I've modified my program. Let me run it again. Yep, okay, I've got this change made. Now I can click the commit button right here. And what that does is it moves my edits back up to the repository in GitHub. If I go back to GitHub, I'm going to type my GitHub. Here I am back on GitHub, and I want to go to my test repository. And if I click on test.py, boom, the change that I made on runpython.org is now here on GitHub. All right, let me work my way back to Runpython. So that's cool. Now it means I can continue to write code here. Test it and commit to my heart's content, and it's all getting stored to GitHub. And if that's a public repository, you can take that URL that we pasted in up here, and you could give it to somebody else and say, hey, here's my code. You can paste it into a forum. You can email it to somebody. You say, hey, here's my code. And they can go into runpython.org, paste that URL in here, and boom, they're looking at your code. Only people authorized to write to your GitHub repository will be able to commit from here, but they can all execute your code if it's a public repository. So that's the basics of working with GitHub in runpython.org. For the next tutorial, we'll look at the integration with Google Drive.